right. We've got another question from Hockey Haloed. It says, this is a funny one, honestly, to me. He says, once you start looking at your personal finances, how do you stop? I find myself more and more distracted by optimization these days. This is a very deep financial mutant question, and I think you guys are the perfect ones to answer it. What do you have to say?
Well, I'll speak for me personally, right? One of the things that I do, Hockey, is I do an annual net worth statement. And when I say annual, I mean literally one time a year I do my net worth statement. It's always on 12/31 or thereabouts at the end of the year. Because I recognize my personality, being a financial mutant, loving this stuff so much. If I were tracking this stuff on a weekly or a monthly or a quarterly basis, I would literally allow it to drive me nuts. And so purposefully, I try to not ignore it because I focus on my behavior. I focus on the things I can control, my savings rate and my allocation and my tax strategy and the fees that I pay and those types of things. I focus on my behavior, but the outcome, I try to let myself, quote unquote, be surprised by at the end of every year so that I'm not focusing on the little stuff. I'm not majoring in the minors. I'm keeping an eye on the big picture. That's one of the ways that I stay not dialed in and not laser focused and lose sight of the forest for the trees.
I've made this analogy before, but I think it works out quite nicely, is that I think about when you discover personal finances, it in a lot of ways, and we'll make the analogy and tie it into doing the net worth statement. It's like having, a newborn baby. And the fact that, now you know where I'm going with this, is that, look, in the beginning, your finances are going to need a ton of attention. You need to be getting those affirming things of like, pay attention to your finances, look at them weekly, look at them monthly, because you need to be in there to kind of, you're doing all the triage to fix your situation. You're listening to our content. You're going through the financial order of operations. You're trying to absorb as much information that you possibly can. I think that's completely healthy. Plus, because I remember for me, when I first discovered, I still remember in the mid-90s when I got the Millionaire Next Door, the Wealthy Barber, and I was like, holy cow, I feel like somebody has just opened up my brain and shown me the path. And I'm hoping that's what Millionaire Mission and the Money Guy Show, we're doing that for you guys too. So I want you to be energized and excited. And I want you, because you're, like you said, you're in that infant stage where you can't stand on your own yet. You need a lot of attention. But you will notice if you start making the right steps, you start learning the right things, you start automating the process, there's going to be less and less you're actually adding value by tinkering. And that's why I do think you graduate from updating your net worth statement and doing things within your personal finances weekly to maybe it turns into monthly and then it turns into quarterly. And then hopefully you get to a graduation point, kind of like where Bo is now, where you still need to be giving it attention, but you just don't have to do it as much because now your money and your army of dollar bills are they're not only, feeding themselves and taking care of their personal hygiene on their own and bathing themselves. They're actually now graduating high school, going to college, and maybe once a year is still necessary so you can give them the old pep talk, your personal finances pep talk, but it should be doing everything on its own at that point because you automated the behavior. You focused on the good steps, and it allows you, that's why we gave you the financial order of operations and share all this, is because I'm hoping by the time you get to step 8 of the financial order of operations and you get to abundance goals and you start thinking about what is the why and how am I going to use this money, it's a much more mature and focused thing that from an abundance standpoint than when you're having to just think about your money as how it covers your bills, because that takes away your ability to focus on owning your time, focus on what the purpose, because you're just trying to survive and cover. And that's why I think it's perfectly fine, Hockey, to be hyper-focused on it in the beginning because you're trying to affirm those good behaviors and those habits. But just know thyself to where you can graduate to where it stays on the healthy side of things and you're not alienating your friends, your loved ones to the point that you're over-focused and not thinking about what money can and cannot do.
I'm curious, Megan, can you do a poll for me? If I ask you for a poll, can you do it? I want to know, like, our audience, how frequently are they doing net worth statements? And let's do it like this. Do you do it annually, more frequently than annually, or what's a net worth statement, right? Because I think it's an interesting thing to see what our financial mutants do. The other thing, as you were talking, Brian, because what Hockey said is I'm so focused on optimization. I've started paying attention. I'm so focused. You have to make sure is the juice worth the squeeze?
The hassle factor.
Is it? Because I was sitting here thinking, like high yield. Oh my! Right now I've got a high yield account paying 4.5%, but man, I saw another that was like 4.55. If you're spending a whole lot of time trying to go grab that, unless you're holding like an egregious amount of cash, I don't know if it's worth it. I put credit card rewards. Are you someone who every 2 weeks you're applying for a new credit card, you're rotating your categories? Well, when you actually look at the benefits you're receiving, is it worth it? Are you getting a ton of benefit for that? And then the third one I put was taxes. Are you someone who every time you're writing down the miles every time you get out of your car and you're tracking every single receipt for every single thing that you buy? Well, that can be valuable, and there's certainly
some of that you have to do.
Some of that. Well, I'm making the suggestion that if you're so laser focused on these like minuscule things, I would really ask myself, am I really optimizing, or is me trying to optimize actually causing me to be suboptimal? Because I am focusing on the little things that don't have big impact instead of the big things that have significant impact. As you were talking, that was what was kind of like ruminating through my mind.
Yeah, it's back to, because I have shared on this show before that I had a dear friend that their marriage was under a lot of pressure because he just was too tight, requiring the spouse to give every copy of every receipt and transaction. And that was just too much. Once you get to a point of there's nothing wrong when you're in the beginning stages where you need discipline and accountability for you guys to be, especially with your spouse, y'all be on the same page and you have this common goal. But there can go too far when you've kind of built, an automated wealth building strategy. Why are you still hyper focused on that? It's just not worth the hassle and the damage it does to relationships.